The date is October 14th, 2026, somewhere inside the private wing of Kensington Palace, behind a door that only 3 living people have the key to. Prince William is sitting alone at a desk that once belonged to his mother. In front of him is a single envelope, cream-colored, slightly yellowed at the edges, sealed with a wax stamp that hasn't been touched in nearly 30 years, and written across the front, in that unmistakable slanted handwriting the whole world once knew by heart, are 4 words that stop him cold. For William. When ready. What if I told you that letter has been sitting inside the Royal Archive since 1996, and that the moment William finally broke the seal, everything the palace had built around Queen Camilla for the last 2 decades began to quietly, terrifyingly, unravel? Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button, because what you're about to hear is the kind of story the palace has spent 30 years praying would stay buried. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what Diana wrote, exactly why Camilla went pale when she was told, and exactly what William is now preparing to do about it. Stay with this, because this is not gossip. This is the moment a son finally gets to hear from a mother the institution silenced. To understand what that letter means, you have to go back. Not to the fairy tale wedding. Not to the panorama interview. Further than that, you have to go back to the quiet, unbearable months in 1996, when Diana, Princess of Wales, knew exactly what was coming for her. The divorce had been finalized in August of that year. Her Hirsch title had been stripped. Her security had been reduced. Her phones, she believed, were being monitored. And the men in gray, those anonymous courtiers, who ran the machinery of the monarchy long before anyone had heard the phrase, had made it very clear that her role in the future of the crown was over. But Diana was not naive. She was, by that point, one of the most media-literate women on the planet. And according to sources close to her inner circle at the time, she began doing something the palace never anticipated. She began writing letters. Not press statements. Not memoirs. Private, sealed, dated letters, some for her boys, some for her butler, some for her closest friends with strict instructions on when and how they should be opened. Most of those letters the world already knows about. The one to Paul Burrell. The notes to her brother. The scribbled pages found in her Kensington apartment after the crash in Paris. But there was always a whisper, quiet and persistent among royal watchers. That one letter, the most important one, had never surfaced. A letter written specifically for William, to be opened only when he was ready to understand it. And for nearly 30 years, no one knew where it was. Until now. Here's the part nobody expected. The letter wasn't hidden by Diana's family. It wasn't tucked away by a loyal friend. It was, according to insiders monitoring the family's internal dynamics, sealed inside the royal archives at Windsor. Filed, catalogued, deliberately misplaced under a benign heading that no researcher would ever think to pull. And the person who placed it there, sources suggest, was not Diana herself. It was someone acting on her behalf. Someone who understood exactly what would happen if the wrong person opened it first. Think about that for a moment. A letter from the most famous woman of the 20th century, addressed to the future king, deliberately buried inside the very institution she was trying to warn him about. Because that is what the letter is. A warning. Now, William has been Prince of Wales since September 2022, and in the years since his father's coronation, those close to him say something has been shifting. Slowly, at first. Then, in 2025 and into 2026, more visibly. He has been requesting access to files that hadn't been touched since his mother's death. He has been quietly asking archivists not through his private secretary, but personally about what remains of Diana's correspondence held under Crown custody. And in the summer of 2026, according to 2 separate accounts, one of those archivists finally handed him a single sealed envelope and said, "Sir, I believe this was meant for you." He didn't open it that day. He didn't open it for weeks. He took it back to Kensington Palace, placed it in the drawer of the desk that had been hers, and, according to those who know him best, simply sat with it. Because William is not impulsive. He is his mother's son in temperament, but he is his grandmother's son in patience. He waited until he was certain. Until he was ready. And when he finally broke the seal, what he read reportedly changed the way he sees his stepmother, his father, and the entire structure of the monarchy he is about to inherit. Now ask yourself something. If you were writing your final letter to your son knowing you might not be there to guide him, what would you put in it? Love. Yes. Advice, of course. But what if you also knew something? Something specific. Something about the woman who would one day sit on the throne beside your ex-husband. Something the public had never been told. Because that, insiders say, is what the letter contains. According to sources close to those monitoring the family's internal dynamics, Diana's letter to William is not a general reflection on life or motherhood. It is startlingly specific. It reportedly names dates. It reportedly references conversations. It references a particular meeting Diana claims to have had in the spring of 1996, a meeting she says she was not supposed to survive politically, and one in which certain understandings were made about Camilla's future role inside the family. Understandings that, at the time, were categorically denied by the palace. Understandings that, if written in Diana's own hand and dated before her death, would carry an emotional weight no press office in the world could neutralize. And here's where it gets even more chilling. The letter is reportedly unredacted. There are no crossings out, no hesitations. Diana wrote it, according to those who claim to have seen it, in a single sitting, in blue ink, on Kensington Palace stationery, and signed it not Mummy as she signed most notes to her boys, but with her full name. Diana, as if she knew this one had to stand up as a document, not just a memory. If you've made it this far, do me a favor, hit the like button. Because stories like this, the ones that pull the curtain back on what really happens behind palace walls, only reach the people who need to hear them when you engage. And trust me, we are only just getting to the part that made Camilla go silent. Because when William finished reading the letter, he did not go to his father. He did not go to his private secretary. He did not, as protocol would dictate, refer the matter to the keeper of the privy purse, or to the Lord Chamberlain's office. He did something else entirely. He picked up the phone, and he called Clarence House. He asked to speak to the Queen, not the King, the Queen. Camilla, sources say, took the call in her private sitting room at Mill House, her personal home in Wiltshire, the one property she has always insisted on keeping separate from the machinery of the crown. She was expecting a routine family matter, perhaps a question about Christmas at Sandringham, perhaps a scheduling conflict for an upcoming engagement. What she was not expecting was for her stepson, the future king, to tell her, in a voice she later described to a confidante as unnervingly calm, that he had found something. Something written by his mother. Something that mentioned her by name. There was a pause on the line, according to the account. A long one. And then Camilla is reported to have said only 4 words. When was it written? William gave her the date. And that, insiders say, is the moment the Queen went silent. Because the date on the letter, reportedly late spring of 1996, corresponds to a period in Camilla's life that has never been fully explained in the public record. A period during which she was, officially, living quietly out of the spotlight. A period during which she was, unofficially, according to Diana's private notes at the time, already being briefed on the long-term communications strategy that would one day rehabilitate her image and pave the way for her eventual marriage to Charles. A strategy that took nearly a decade to execute. A strategy that, if Diana documented it in real time and in her own handwriting, would rewrite the entire narrative of the Camilla comeback. Think about what that means. For 30 years, the story the public has been told is that Camilla's rehabilitation was organic, slow, earned, that the British public simply came around. That time healed. That Charles's steadfastness was rewarded. But Diana's letter, if it says what sources claim it says, tells a very different story. It tells a story of coordination, of planning, of a communications operation that began before Diana was even divorced. And William, according to those who know him, is not the kind of man to sit on something like that. Here's the part that has the palace terrified. William is not Harry. He does not do interviews. He does not write memoirs. He does not leak to sympathetic journalists. What William does when he decides to act is quiet, precise, institutional. He works through the machinery, not against it. And that, ironically, makes him far more dangerous to the current arrangement than his younger brother ever was. Because if William decides that his mother's letter should shape the way the monarchy transitions, if he decides that certain honors, certain titles, certain ceremonial roles should be reconsidered in light of what he now knows, there is no press office on earth that can stop him. He is the heir. And within a matter of years, he will be the sovereign. Camilla knows this. Charles knows this. And the men in gray who spent 30 years engineering the current settlement know it too. Which brings us to the meeting. Because the phone call was not the end of it. According to sources close to those monitoring the family's internal dynamics, William requested a face-to-face meeting. Not at Buckingham Palace. Not at Clarence House. He asked Camilla to come to Kensington, to the apartment where Diana had lived, to the very rooms where the letter had been addressed to him. And Camilla, insiders say, agreed. She arrived on a gray Tuesday afternoon in early October. No press. No official cars. A single protection officer. She was shown into the drawing room, where William was already waiting. On the table between them, sources say, was the letter. Face down, unread by her, and it stayed face down for the entire meeting. Because William did not need to show her the letter. He only needed to tell her what it said. They spoke, according to the account, for just under 40 minutes. Staff who were present in the corridor said the door remained closed the entire time. No raised voices. No slammed doors. Just the low, steady sound of two people having the conversation that 30 years of protocol had prevented them from ever having. And when Camilla emerged, one member of household staff described her expression in a single word. Hollow. She reportedly did not speak to her protection officer on the drive back to Wiltshire. She did not stop at Clarence House. She did not, according to sources, take a call from her husband for nearly 6 hours. She simply went home, sat in her private sitting room, and, in the words of one person familiar with the matter, processed the fact that a woman who had been dead for 29 years had just spoken directly to her, in her stepson's voice, from the other side of the grave. Think about that for a moment. Now, what does the letter actually say? That is the question everyone wants answered. And here is what sources close to those monitoring the family's internal dynamics are willing to confirm. It says 3 things. The first is a message of love. A long, tender, unhurried passage in which Diana tells William that she is proud of him, that she knows what kind of king he will one day be, that she has watched him from the age of 14 carry weight that no boy should carry, and that he must never, ever let the institution convince him that duty and cruelty are the same thing. The second is a warning, a specific, detailed warning about the individuals inside the palace who, Diana believed, were actively working to reshape the succession in ways that would benefit Camilla and disadvantage Diana's own children. She names, according to those who claim to have knowledge of the contents, at least 2 courtiers by name, both of whom are still connected to the current royal household in advisory capacities. And the third, the part that reportedly left Camilla speechless, is a request. Not a demand. Not an accusation. A request. Diana asks William if he ever finds himself in a position to protect her legacy, to ensure that certain symbols of her time as Princess of Wales are never under any circumstances worn, displayed, or ceremonially associated with the woman who replaced her. She names the tiara. She names the ring. She names a specific piece of jewelry that has, in recent years, been quietly circulating between royal wardrobes in ways that had already caused private tension within the family. And she signs it, with love that outlives all of this. Diana. That is the letter. That is what Camilla was told, in a quiet drawing room in Kensington Palace on a gray Tuesday in October. And that is why, according to sources close to the family, she has been noticeably absent from several scheduled engagements in the weeks since. Officially, the palace has cited a seasonal cold. Unofficially, those who know her say she has been shaken in a way that no one around her has ever seen before. But here's the thing. This is not a story about revenge. William, sources are keen to emphasize, is not out to destroy his stepmother. He has spent 20 years managing his complicated feelings about her presence in his father's life, and he has, by all accounts, been publicly gracious and privately restrained. That is not going to change overnight. What has changed is something deeper, something structural. For the first time in his adult life, William has a document in his mother's own hand, dated and signed before her death, that gives him moral authority the palace cannot override. It is not a legal document. It has no binding force. But in the strange, symbolic world of the British monarchy, where legitimacy is built on continuity and continuity is built on memory, a letter like that is more powerful than any court ruling. It holds against press briefings. It holds against palace pressure. It holds against the king himself. And William knows it. So what happens now? What does a future king do with a letter like that? The answer, according to those who understand how William operates, is nothing loud, nothing sudden, nothing that would give the tabloids a headline or hand his critics a weapon. What he will do is quiet, patient, cumulative. Certain engagements will be reassigned. Certain jewels will quietly return to the vault. Certain names on certain guest lists will begin to appear less frequently. And in 5 years, or 10, when historians look back and try to identify the moment the monarchy shifted from the Charles and Camilla era to the William and Catherine era, they will not be able to point to a single announcement or a single scandal. They will point to a letter. A cream-colored envelope, sealed with wax, opened one autumn afternoon in Kensington Palace by a son who had waited 30 years to hear from his mother. And here is the emotional truth of it. Diana was right. She knew in 1996 that she was fighting a battle she could not win in her lifetime. She knew the machinery of the monarchy was too big, too old, too coordinated for her to defeat while she was alive. So she did something extraordinary. She wrote her son a letter and trusted the future to carry it. She trusted William to grow into the man who could open it. She trusted that love, written down and preserved, could outlast even the most sophisticated public relations campaign in royal history. And she was right about that too. The palace that built its entire identity on control is no longer controlling its own house. The narrative that took 30 years to construct is being quietly, patiently unwound by a single piece of paper. And Camilla, who has spent her entire adult life navigating the impossible geometry of being the woman she is inside a family that was never supposed to accept her, is now facing the one voice she cannot answer, cannot negotiate with, and cannot outmaneuver. The voice of a woman who has been gone for 29 years, and who somehow from the pages of a sealed letter just spoke louder than anyone in the room. But there's one more person we haven't talked about yet. Because Diana didn't write only one letter that spring. Sources close to those monitoring the family's internal dynamics say there was a second envelope, a shorter one, addressed to someone else entirely. And what that letter says and who is now holding it may be even more shocking than what William has just read. If you've made it this far, hit that like button, because stories like this don't stay buried for long. And the people who need to hear them find them through you. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter, because the second letter is already circulating, and the name on the front of it will change the way you see this family forever. Somewhere tonight, inside a quiet room in Kensington Palace, a future king is sitting at his mother's desk, folding a piece of paper back into its envelope, and quietly deciding what kind of monarchy his children will inherit. And somewhere in Wiltshire, a queen is sitting alone, listening to a silence she cannot fill, hearing a voice she thought had been silenced forever. Diana always said the truth would find its way out. It just took 30 years. And a son who was finally ready to listen.